Good evening. The theme of harvesting runs across the two-day festival of Shavuot, Pentecost, which this year starts on the evening of the 8th of June. Shavuot is considered, as is Passover in early spring and Tabernacles in autumn, a pilgrim's festival. 7 weeks after the ripening of wheat in early spring, Jewish farmers would offer these to God with prayers of gratitude. A span of 7 weeks separated Exodus from Egypt from Revelation at the foot of Mount Sinai. During this period, and having just been liberated from Egypt, Jews were allowed the psychological and emotional space to liberate themselves from the mindset of slavery. They underwent a 49-day transformation before standing at the foot of Mount Sinai for the revelation of the Torah, Hebrew Scriptures. Having been extracted from Egypt by divine intervention, the influence of slavery needed to be extracted from the Jews. On Passover, the people of Israel were freed from enslavement to Pharaoh. On Shavuot, they were given the Torah and became a nation. During Shavuot, we read and study the book of Ruth. There are a rainbow of reasons why this is the book of the season. The story of Ruth and Boaz takes place in the spring, at harvest time. Shavuot falls in harvest time. Ruth, from the tribe of Moab, expressed her loyalty to the Torah and converted to Judaism. As such, we read her story on the holiday of the giving of the Torah. Ruth was King David's great-grandmother. King David was born and died on Shavuot. For these reasons, the book of Ruth is intimately linked to Shavuot. On Shavuot, Jewish tradition tells us that in 1312 BCE, 3 million people stood at the foot of Mount Sinai, where God handed down the Torah in a fabulous spectacle of stunning sound and sparkling light. 3 million people were present at the scene, establishing Judaism as a religion based on communal, not individual revelation. The Torah speaks to us about communal revelation where everyone present at the base of Mount Sinai, all 3 million human beings, heard God speak and reveal his laws. The Torah forged the eternal bond between the giver and all recipients, and not Moses in seclusion. All present stood as first-hand witnesses. The giving of the Torah was an event of awesome proportions that stamped upon the Jewish people faith, vision, and destiny. At an individual level, the Torah has goaded us to move away from the greatest tyranny of all, the enslavement of self. Shavuot has no obvious symbols of the day as other festivals have. Indeed, the absence of any specific symbols focuses our attention on the Torah itself and its centrality in Jewish life. The core of this festival is to study and enthuse our lives based on the teachings of the Torah and to see in it the roadmap for the construction of our personal and communal lives. The Torah is not merely a book of bedtime stories laced with travels and troubles. The Torah is saturated in parables, prophetic revelations, Kabbalistic undertones, and ethical guidelines. It is also a geography book flagging the odyssey of the Jews from Abraham to their settling the land of Israel, culminating in their first and second exiles, and all the places visited and inhabited in the process. The 1967 Six-Day War ended a few days before the festival of Shavuot. This was the first festival in 2,000 years when Jews could freely pray by the Western Wall away from the subjugating control of Roman forces, the whims of the Ottoman Empire, the unsympathetic austerity measures imposed by British mandatory forces between 1917 and 1948, and the military control of the area by Jordanian troops between 1948 and 1967. On Shavuot 1967, the Western Wall was opened to visitors. On that day, incredibly, over 200,000 Jewish pilgrims journeyed by foot to the Western Wall. This has since become an annual tradition. Early in the morning of Shavuot, following a night of learning, the streets of Jerusalem are filled with tens of thousands of Jews making their way to the Western Wall, treading on the same paths and trails walked by co-religionists 2,000 years earlier. Shavuot encapsulates the core of the Jewish soul. Without the Torah, we would have been a band of slaves on the loose. The Torah provided the spiritual vitality and the guidelines to nurture the Jewish people during 40 years of nomadic life in the Sinai desert. It has served the Jewish people fondly in bonding and inspiring a people in exile to find solace at times of unbearable grief and to find vision and meaning in the troughs of despair. The Torah's teachings have never let us down in moments of spiritual and physical exhaustion. Its vibrancy remains as inspiring, persuasive, and relevant today as it was when we stood at the foot of Mount Sinai, cementing the bonds that made the Jewish people tick. The lessons of the Torah ensured we were not robbed of our vitality brought on by traumatic events in our national narrative. Throughout the centuries, we have viewed the Torah as the unparalleled source of our spiritual life and destiny. Every Shavuot we seal afresh the seal of this bond with relish and resolve. Shavuot thus relives the early summer ripening of tender shoots. We commemorate revelation of the law, and we pay homage to Ruth. These three cardinal elements inspired one rabbi to graphically describe Shavuot as the holiday of youth, truth, and Ruth. Shalom, and thank you for listening.